I too am very grateful it's not National No Pants Day. I gotta be honest, not just the weather. I'm from Southern California, so I'm used to a little bit warmer weather this time, although it has been getting a little cold and wet. So glad to get out of that mess. So with that said, let me kick off my morning here. So, as Steve mentioned, I am CEO of a company called Cylance, and we create next generation antivirus, but also solutions that actually apply to avionics systems, like in-flight entertainment systems. But I'm also probably more or better well known for Hacking Exposed, and everywhere I go around the world, I usually always ask the question, anybody heard of Hacking Exposed? And to my surprise, there's always at least a couple, no matter what language I'm presenting in, and it is truly humbling how far-reaching that book has become. But I think it's become far-reaching because of its content, because we were one of the first ever to expose how the hacker thinks and how they work, but more importantly, to demystify it. It really, the impetus behind the book came from me being very frustrated, week after week, month after month, seeing all of these newspaper headlines claiming these whiz-kid hackers, right? These super smart people, kids that can boil water just looking at it, right? And I knew differently. I knew that it didn't take a lot of smarts to do 99% or more of all of the activity, all the illicit, malicious activity. But me, I was working at InfoWorld at the time, and I had a little megaphone called the InfoWorld publication, and a weekly column at the time called Security Watch. And so I decided, well, let's put this to good use. So that's what I started to do, release that kind of content into a book, make it very methodical, recipe-driven, so that every defender, every administrator can understand how simple it is, not just to hack, but more importantly, how to defend the hack. And that was the big push for the book. All right, so does anybody in the room remember this flight? It's United Flight 811. 89, yeah? Okay. So if you recall, flying out of Honolulu, the cargo door opened in mid-flight and ripped a whole 20 by 40 foot section of the plane up to the business class. And they landed, came back, landed safely. Here's a picture while on board. Everybody was in their vests and in crash positions for a good 5 minutes or so. At the very end, we're about 20 minutes up in the air. Here is the results in the light of day, the actual damage that occurred, and 9 souls lost their life that night, that morning, as 5 rows of seats got pulled out into the darkness of the night. As you can see from the passenger's view, there was quite a bit of damage as part of the rapid decompression that occurred. Well, I was on that flight. I was just a young kid who, was one of those kids that when you grow up, you're like, I'm not gonna grow up past 21, right? You just think like, I can't imagine me being 21. I'm certainly gonna die before that. And the moments when this happened, what do you think I said to myself? Damn it, I'm right, damn it. Luckily, survived the harrowing experience, and forever it's changed my life. It's changed the course of my future and what I do today. So I'll explain a little bit why. So the days after, of course, we were all interviewed by FBI trying to figure out the root cause, the real source of the problem. We thought it was all a bomb because of Block B. Of course, didn't get a lot of answers at the time. Well, until they found this. This is the cargo door that actually blew off the plane and landed in the Pacific Ocean. And after review of the door, they realized that it was, the door was intact. It was as if something from the inside made this happen. And that's exactly what happened. You can see actually FAA, phenomenal video an animation there of what they believe really happened to the plane. Starting with a short in the wiring system, which told the door to open in mid-flight. And because of the aluminum-based latching mechanism of the steel door under high pressure, it didn't have a chance. The aluminum hook simply broke away, and the rest is history. This was probably my first real exposure to what we call in the business a design flaw. Yeah, design flaw. Now in this case, this design flaw was mechanical, and it was in the physical world. But what I've discovered is that pretty much every single attack that happens today in cyber, too, is a design flaw. It's either design flaw at coding, at design, at architecting, some way in the process of delivering that product to market. So that's really where my path started, and I didn't know, why I had gone through this experience at the time, but I do now, in retrospect. So where my passion goes today, in large part, is this invisible world of the embedded systems. As you can tell, they're everywhere. We talk about smart cars, we talk about projectors and lighting systems and air conditioning, HVACs, and you name it, they're everywhere, okay? Little to no security by design, insanely long lead times for correction or fixing, right? So McAfee got acquired by Intel. I said I knew hardware, back in the day, but I really didn't know anything about hardware and chips until you start with Intel. And to me, getting a fix or a patch out within 6 months was way, way too late. That was insanely long. You never build a system that took longer than 6 months to deliver a new fix. I was joking one day because we were talking about Armageddon scenario planning, tabletop exercises, and I said, okay, look, just for me to understand this process of changing the chip of Intel, let's say that we are in World War III. We're in full-blown combat, okay, with the world. And you, as largest chip provider in the world, has to make a change. How long would that take? If you put every single mind that you have, all 99,000 employees, on this problem to fix it, how long would it take? I said, 3 years. I'm like, 3 years? He goes, yeah, and that is the best possible scenario. I thought to myself, 3 years that's just insane. That can't be. So I decided, well, I'm gonna try and make every effort that I can to help expose this problem and get attention to it. So very few protective measures as part of all of these solutions. Here are just a few of the embedded guts, the operating systems of all these systems out there, okay? And this is just a small sampling, okay, of the operating systems that will run on ATC systems, NAS systems, you name it. They're all of these and more. Even more COTS stuff, obviously with NextGen, right? You're getting more and more COTS. Now, that's all of the operating systems, just quick smattering. Now, for each operating system, these are all of the chips that can have to be supported, and that can be supported in different platforms. So over 2 billion devices, this was probably about 2 years ago that I got that graphic, that statistic. There's far more today. They are everywhere, and they're becoming so ubiquitous that you see them all over the place. Now, every single one of these systems, I or my team has performed some sort of threat modeling against in our careers. My very, very first one was BART. Anybody ridden BART, San Francisco? Okay. Hopefully not around 2003. Because that's when we were there engaged, going through a threat modeling exercise. And mistakenly, I will say, mistakenly, thought a hacker was on a particular sensitive system. As part of the instructions of the local team that we were engaged with, we killed that process just by doing a simple kill command. It's a simple, if you're on a Unix system, it's KILL-9 and then the process. It's that simple, right? hit that, and guess what happened? Poor slobs were sitting there for 45 minutes in a tube, shut down, totally cold, like lights out, no, under the water, because of one process being killed, right? We hear about this a lot, you know. We saw it back with the systems, I think it was earlier this year. One system gets shut down, system has to update, one system reboots, and you can see catastrophic difficulties. My good friend learned how to actually break into ATMs, these fast cash ATMs, Barnaby Jack, and he was able to actually get the machine to cough it up of all of its money, all from remote, all wirelessly, and literally. So you want to know what that problem was? A default password. That was it. So everybody's like, "Oh, Barnes, you're so smart," and he was. Trust me, he was the guy that could boil water, but he was like, "Nah, it was nothing. I just discovered a back door," and that was built by the manufacturer. See, built by design, insecurely. And I can go through every story, every picture here with some kind of a story like that. This is Stuxnet. These are uranium enrichment centrifuges, okay, that were hacked. One of my favorite, though, was what I did on stage at RSA in 2012. I demonstrated, oh, sorry, a little too excited here with my auto play. But this is an insulin pump. If anybody knows anybody that has diabetes, sorry. I was able to show how to hack that device from remote, all wirelessly. Now, how did we discover it? Well, just like with Barnaby Jack, sorry, it's right there in the code. Again, a hard-coded backdoor. Now, why would you think that folks would build these hard-coded backdoors into these systems? I actually was scratching my head at the time. Well, they admitted, look, when they're quality testing every single insulin pump and wireless sensor, they can't match the serial numbers or whatever the unique username passwords are to each and every single one. It's too cost prohibitive. So they build in a hard-coded QA backdoor that they never remove. And as a result, you have the ability, just like in a few Hollywood TV shows, they've used this now. It's sort of cute to see it up on the big screen, these kind of techniques. But it actually does work, and it actually does exactly what we designed it to do. So let me fast forward last year, and we released a report called Operation Cleaver. If you haven't heard of it or seen it, feel free to go to Cylance.com, and it's in the resources section. And it details a 3 to 5 year campaign sourcing out of Iran, targeting critical infrastructure around the globe. The first phase was just initial compromise. They would find different ways in. It was at least 2 to 3 teams. The first team, reconnaissance and initial identification of vector in. Okay. Once that was done, they were able to hand it to the second team, who went in and did the data exfiltration and persistence, set up a backdoor, a way to come back in all of the time without anybody noticing. With the final stage that we did not see, but we certainly saw evidence of ability and opportunity, was sabotage. And of the 65 known victims to our visibility, and again, we felt as though we were seeing 1/10, 1/4 max of all of the victims, and we saw 65. They were everything you could think of under the sun. Korean Airlines, out of Seoul, right? The major IT provider, the upstream third parties, they were hacked. Airports around the world, you name it. I don't want to get anybody in trouble because I can't name names, but other than a few. But it was very obvious that what they were able to do was to almost do anything. They were able to set themselves up so well and get into places that everybody just thinks, they're secure, or somebody's thought about that before, right? Somebody's already figured out how these guys get in and they prevent this today. And unfortunately, that just wasn't the case with Operation Cleaver. And we see these kinds of attacks happening all the time. Now, one of the things that I always say is, here's security program 101. You want to go back to your offices and just be like, I'm the new whiz kid on the block, right? Just remember this one thing. Every security program really has just 3 things to it, and that's it. The first is prevention. You try to prevent everything you possibly can, whether that be through standards or assessment or prevention technologies or procedures. Second is whatever you don't prevent, you have to detect, right? So whatever you're missing in prevention, you want to be able to detect soon, close after the prevention was bypassed. Then lastly, whatever was not detected, you want to eventually respond to and have a plan of response. And it's that simple. I mean, there's really nothing more than that. It's prevention, and do as much prevention as possible. What gets past detection, do as much detection as possible. And then what gets past detection, try and respond to it as much as possible. And that's it. There's nothing more than that. So when we talk about the very beginning, which is prevention, you have to talk about threat modeling. You have to understand where the threats are coming and going to, and how easy it really is. So as part of that, you usually start thinking about, okay, in avionics and aviation, and the process therein, where can you go to? So you can think of, physical attacks, certainly, and that has to be part of any security program. But we're here for cyber, and to talk most about cyber. So you either talk about local attacks or remote attacks. We've seen this in embedded systems with being able to hack into antennas on embedded systems. We've seen ADSB, right, and ACARS hacking out there in the public domain. We've seen SATCOM security hacking, very successful. All those are remote. And we've seen IFEs that have been compromised in some form or another, both local and remote. So when you think about the obvious places to start to look, these, which are the ones that are publicly known, are certainly a great place to go start. Then you can go backwards to the original design teams of all of the systems. Physical access is an age-old problem. It'll be here forever and ever. If you don't prevent the unauthorized access to systems like on Boeing 777, unlocked by default, right? So simple little things that just aren't designed in from the ground up. Access, of course, to portable maintenance access terminals, a lot of the circuitry that's part of that airplane, as well as all of the flight management systems, or a good portion therein. You've got control to the cockpit door, even oxygen masks. So by the way, on my flight, the oxygen masks only deployed in certain sections, not in mine, because the actual triggering device for our section went with the door. It was designed right there on top of the cargo door. So when it left, so did our ability to get oxygen masks. Now, luckily, we weren't that high up, only about 24,000 feet. All right, access to AIMS and fly-by-wire, cockpit door lock, control lock system, circuit breakers. So think about embedded systems. We've seen already attempts to demonstrate how easy it is to fabricate, to man-in-the-middle attack, ADSB and ACARS. And the lesson with this type of threat model is we have to provide strong authentication and authorization, basically encryption, to these types of systems. Because if we don't, it's very easy to man in the middle of these types of things. We see it on the network, we see it on the system, we see it in the air. I have been obviously very passionate about doing everything in my power to help understand the threat surface area of attack for embedded systems, as you've seen, and in particular with my experience with avionics and aviation. And so when you look at a modern aircraft today, and you think about how you build a threat model, by the way, here's the other simple, 101 course of what is a threat model. There's only 3 parts to a threat model. You look at the input, everything that goes into this system. You look at the output, and then you look at the processing that it takes to go from in to out, and that's it as well. So input on a plane is, well, every antenna, every door, every personnel, that's it, okay? Output, well, what goes outbound? What happens in between, on board, off board, you know, at gate, not at gate. So, as you can see, there are literally dozens of antennas in some of the most modern aircrafts that can go out and in. Most of them are both bidirectional. So think about that. ADSB and ACARS, you've seen some of this probably out there. The attempts to demonstrate this out in at Amsterdam and Hack the Box 2013. Now they did only run it on simulation. Of course, that's what they told us anyway. And they were able to send spoofed ACAR messages, which in their words, not mine, right? So I could not validate this, could exploit vulnerabilities in the flight management system. Of course, the short-term countermeasure was turn off autopilot, fly manually, which is always the case, right? Just forget the tech, go into it. One last threat model, SATCOM security. So as you saw with all the antennas, if there's a way out, there's usually a way in. So if you go in through alternate means, like through satellite systems, through NAS systems, next gen, you're going to find a path in somewhere, somehow. So providing not just multiple layers of defense, but providing that prevention first, then detection of that which can be prevented, and then response of that which cannot be detected. It's just critical. But in this case as well, those hard-coded passwords, you see a theme? I'm telling you, like 9 out of 10 of these attacks, there's nothing new. Trust me. You might see it in a headline and people will try and hype it up as something new, but it's rarely so. The first reported bypass of an IFE, at least in the wild, was this gentleman, Chris Roberts. Now, there is as much urban myth on this one as there is real truth, so you have to sort of take this with a grain of salt. But supposedly being able to gain access, physical access, into an Ethernet port for the IFE, and was able to basically take over the IFE and engage the flight management to whatever degree he was able to, or if it was really even truly possible, is a little TBD. However, my sources on the inside of the investigation say there was some truth to it. And it's enough to take it, at least consider it seriously as a threat model. Default usernames, backdoors. I don't know if you saw that part, but that was one of the key last findings. Again, right? So hopefully I'm being a little repetitive and it's coming across. So air traffic control system, let's bring it back home. So we all know FSMA, we know what it was trying to do, but we also know its limitations. It was really around controls and trying to limit those controls. And that, or trying to increase the controls. That really is all prevention, okay? Doesn't really talk, it talks a little bit about detection, but really it doesn't talk anything around response, okay? And you have to think about all three. And with all of the systems that are being interconnected at all times within as part of Next Gen, you are going to see a broader surface area of attack. So more and more threat models have to be built. And the sooner they're built, the sooner we can have visibility into the real surface area of attack for these systems and prevent something bad. So my call to action, and I didn't even check on time, sort of doing it by feel. Okay. My call to action to you, and really what I, from my heart, I really appreciate you all being here and letting me speak. Thank you very much for this time. My call to action is to hopefully expose one of you, as many as I possibly can, to this plight, this challenge, and to just expose those that you move back to always ask the question, why? Why do you think this system is secure? Why do you think this network is secure? Why can nobody gain access onto here? and do not settle for anything than a very comprehensive answer to that question. Don't allow them to do the pixie dust and smoke and mirrors. Dig deep, double click, triple click. Let me come in and scare them. I'm happy to. Just let me know, but don't let those opportunities go by. Don't be shy. Challenge all the claims that that's impossible. Because I got to tell you, every attack we've seen before it was successfully proven, it was always impossible. It's not possible, it can't happen. Engage with smart people inside and outside the company to help. So don't be afraid to keep asking those questions. Demand increased focus on cybersecurity. Think of the 9 souls and 346 survivors that we'll never forget. I always say each day is a new opportunity, right? It's almost like a new life you get every single morning. So take that opportunity. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Further on as we go through the day, text the questions to me, but for now, does anyone we have time for a couple questions if anyone has questions. Don't be shy.
Yes?
What's the next gen piece of the antivirus that you've come up with?
Thank you. You're not a plant too, right? No. So what we've been able to invent is a totally new way of determining known and unknown, okay? Determining bad in both known and unknown, algorithmically, mathematically. So no more signatures, no more looking at the past to know the present. We can look at the past to now know the future. So with next-gen antivirus that we have labeled our technology, uses pure algorithms and math, so there's no updating anymore. You never have to have another update. You never have to be connected to the cloud. Think about perfect security. Perfect security is all those things. You don't have to, there's nothing that's perfect, but as perfect as we can get. If you can determine something is good or bad before it actually gets onto the network and then block it, or on the system and block it, whether you've seen it before or not in the world, that is really the future. And I think whether it's us or somebody else, applying mathematics and algorithms into this problem of security is the future. I'm convinced of it today. So we have a technology that sits on a computer and looks at every new thing that tries to execute. And if it is malicious, we block it. And if it's not, we allow it. And it's that simple. Now we've ported our application actually to Linux as well. So Panasonic Avionics is now adopting that technology in theirs, IFEs, and getting out there probably in 2017. I probably shouldn't have said that, but so just keep that between us friends. But the application of this technology is really unlimited. I mean, it's algorithms, right? It can be deployed anywhere. It can be deployed in an 8K processor, 8K memory system and processor. So the ability to deliver this technology in a wide variety of platforms and networks and systems is really, really high. And that's why we get really excited about it. Today, with algorithms, we can get to 99.9% detection and prevention before it ever starts to run. Now, most everybody thinks, Jan, that's not 100%, because AV guys tell us that it's all 100%. They do 100%. Well, then you're actually worse off, buying us than them. But the truth is far different. The truth is they, with their reactive way of determining and detecting threats, they're at about 30 to 35%. And we prove it every single week in the field with these live demonstrations where we call our unbelievable tour. We go around the country, around the world, and we say, bring your malware, bring your attacks, bring your 0 days, bring your APTs, bring anything you want, and we'll run alongside of us, alongside whatever other person that you think is secure, right? Whether it be McAfee, Symantec, whatever. And we'll demonstrate it to you right in front of you. That's how strongly we believe this technology will literally change so much of what we think about for security. So, long-winded answer to your question.
Very good. We need to talk.
I'd love to talk, yeah. I'll leave some cards too, Paul.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
How long does it take to baseline a system with the algorithm process that you use?
Yeah, so the question about baselining, we actually don't need to baseline anymore, because what we've done is if you collect a large enough features of data, okay, in a large enough sample set, remember, nothing is new. So if you travel on the fantasy train with me and you believe that nothing is really new in cybersecurity, that they're all the same attacks, all the same techniques, all the same tools, and you've now collected all of that data and you've built enough features bound on it, you now predict the future, right? You predict the future. Why? Because it's the same old stuff and you've trained on that. So we train on 500 million samples, 500 million samples, and for every sample, we map to 15 million features. Now let me give you a real world example of what that means. To try and take a large audience, let's say it like this, and ask for one feature of all of you that would determine gender, between male and female. Someone might be clever and think hair length. That's one simple feature, hair length. It's longer than a certain length, well then it must be female, right? Well, with one feature, you're gonna get a lot of false positives, right? You're gonna call somebody a man and get into trouble, right? Or a woman and get into trouble. So you can't rely on one feature, but what if you had 15 million features that determine gender? Think how accurate that could be. That's what we do. It's complex and hard, and it took 3.5 years to do it, but it's that simple to sort of grasp. I mean, it is all about data. The more data, the more accurate you're able to predict. And the machine learning algorithms and the neural network algorithms that we use now are so effective, as long as you have the clean data and large enough data. So there's no baselining per se. Now, if you go into embedded systems, it would be more around, yes, you'd have to train on the behavior, which you'd have to baseline. And you'd baseline at the manufacturer. Now, we aren't in embedded systems yet. We're still on Windows and Linux and Mac OS X and things like that. But as we go and push into IoT and embedded systems, that will be a natural extension to our models, would be behavioral models. And you typically would baseline at the manufacturer, and then you re-baseline at the deployment, wherever that might be, operational deployment.
Well, please help me in thanking Stuart.
Thank you.